Serious people with confirmed below average intelligence. How has your intelligence affected your life experience, and what would you want the world to know about what it's like to be you? I have one for this. I was born with a severe case of hydrocephalus that no one caught on to until I went nearly full potato at 18 and then comatose a few days after when I turned 19. Turns out, all the issues that I had with learning things, memory retention, emotional maturity, etc., that was all affected by the water pressure building up on my brain. I wasn't being a lazy slacker kid. I worked my ass off to palm my C's and graduate. I just couldn't process things well, so a lot of it came as difficult for me. In my haze of a memory during the first visit to the neurologist, it was determined that my condition was so severe, I shouldn't have progressed past middle school learning, and most, if not all, people diagnosed with the level of pressurization and compression of the brain as I was, were in ISTED living facilities just surviving as shells. After needing a second surgery a year later, my brain eventually started firing the signals for mental maturity, but the process was still pretty difficult. Had to learn how I learned best. Things didn't process the same way. I've also adapted to overcompensating to make up for the lack of intelligence. Didn't have the work smarter option most times, so I just worked harder. It's been about 12 years since the last surgery, and I've grown immensely during that time as a person. But the work harder to overcompensate is still a huge issue for me. We still don't know how off I really am, cause no one caught it early enough, and that's a really isolating feeling. Your life is like a real life Flowers for All journey, except without the last third of the book. I have a global information processing disorder. If our brains were computers running at 60 frames per second normally, mine runs around 45 on a good day, not quite enough to really be noticeable, as it might in some people with Down syndrome for the sake of example, but enough to lower my IQ and cause problems in my everyday life. I'm one of the lucky ones. I can function relatively normally, discounting autism and the occasional epileptic seizure. However, I'm also fully aware of this deficit and how high my IQ could be. Talking slowly or getting annoyed because I've asked you to repeat something, or pushing me out of the way when I don't react fast enough. That's just rubbing it in. I can't change how well I process information. Believe me, I've asked my doctor about it, and other people have tried before me. I'm stuck where I'm at in this regard, and it's hard to try harder when I'm already running at 110% just to keep up with the rest of the world. My little cousin has this. He's a bright kid, just needs some extra time to respond sometimes. My IQ is just below average. I'm not great at standardized tests or math. I wasn't in a special education program, but I got CS in the average non-APCLES. Scraped by in college. Most of my decisions are based on a feeling, and I just have to work much harder to understand things than most people, so I find I'm just constantly working really hard. But I keep myself open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. But the things I'm good at, I'm really good at. I also try to use it to be funnier in the life of wherever I am. Also, I know this is a cause for shame, but I should also mention, I didn't vote in 2016. Not because I'm lazy, but because I didn't understand either side's policies or what they represented. I know there's a lot of people saying just vote, but like, should I be voting if I don't know exactly what I'm voting for? I would have voted blue because I like to think I'm progressive, but I don't really know what would be different. So now you sort of see how my mind works, hopefully. Not because I'm lazy, but because I didn't understand either side's policies or what they represented. Honestly, in a perfect democracy, this is probably the most thoughtful position one can take. Not many people can admit to themselves that I just don't know enough about either of these two. It would hurt their ego too much. I really don't think you should view it as a shame. I think it shows personal integrity and that you know yourself on a level many people will never know themselves. How easy would it have been to just vote and mimic some talking points if someone asks you about it? A whole lot easier than the legit thinking you had to do to come to your conclusion. What is the best option? To come to the wrong conclusion quick or the right one slow? Your thought process seems solid, realistic and honest, which is more than I can say for a lot of people. With all that said, I think the electoral system would benefit a lot from having people as intellectually honest as you vote. I have an IQ of 90, which means below average. I sometimes see that other people can memorize and understand stuff faster than me. Same, bud. The most annoying thing is when watching slideshows or pop-up things on TV and not be able to read the whole paragraph before it disappears. Late to the thread. I was given an intelligence test in 6th or 7th grade. A group of us were given it for some study. The person entering the data into the scoring matrix misplaced a decimal point on mine. They told my mother I had the IQ of a 5-year-old. It took a week for them to figure out the mistake. For a week straight everyone treated me different. I was the one who answered the phone when they called with the correction. My family still brings it up 20 years later. That is very scary, that everyone treated you different, not because of any difference they could perceive in how you acted, but merely because some authority figure told everyone you were basically disabled. People trust authority over what they can see with their own eyes. Removed. I had Asperger's. Please don't be rude when you have to repeat yourself. Do not expect me to get a hint. If I don't get it, break it to me gently. No car radio and talking at the same time. Too much stimulus. May appear to be angry in loud restaurants. Too much stimulus. Am I doing something socially weird? Talk to me about it nicely in private. I probably didn't realize it was weird and can stop. Please don't ditch me as a friend when, not if, I screw up. At least try to talk it out. No car radio and talking at the same time. Too much stimulus. This made me smile. I can do that, but I absolutely can't talk to someone on the phone while someone in the same room as me tries to talk to me. Drives me mental. My triplet sister was born with a brain bleed and partial damage to her brain. We were all 3 months premature, and it happened to affect her more than me or my brother. She has a lower IQ and was put in the special education class in 2nd grade. I would never consider her to be dumb in any way. We have a very close relationship and we communicate very well. She looks completely normal and has really nothing wrong about her besides her lower IQ. We live in a narcissistic household and she was obviously dubbed as the black sheep and was bullied throughout school as well. When we were younger I also ganged up on her with the rest of my family because I thought it was normal at 7 years old. We've definitely gotten closer as we've gotten older and we kinda stick like glue against the rest of our family. We're both very empathetic and kind and a lot of my other family members are complete bullies, so we seem a tiny out of place. She's doing well now that we've finished high school and she has gotten a boyfriend recently who seems very kind and she will hopefully getting a job soon and moving out by next year. It'll be funny to see her be the first one to move out because everyone always said she would live with my mother forever. I'm proud of her and I love her. Edit. Wow, my first gold. Please tell her you love her and are proud of her as often as you can. I'm sure she really appreciates having you as her compatriot within yours family system. IQ of 87 here. I saw somebody else has 90 IQ. His story is very similar to mine. Words just don't seem to click in college. My brain gets saturated after about 2 hours or so, and I can't remember any studying past that. There's no chance at studying the last minute and it's weird to be the smartest in the family despite her obvious flaws. I seem to have zero ability to think outside the box. It happens from time to time, and it's extremely satisfying when it does. Lastly, my working memory and comprehension is not very good, which is what an IQ test is based on. This means when I'm literally at work in my retail job, sometimes I completely forget what I was doing, or where I put an object a customer was supposed to get at it. Sorry for those who had to wait 7 to 9 hours for a reply. I made the post at 2:30ish in the morning. Oh, and thanks for the silver and up votes, because this is the most popular post I've ever made. I'm interested in what you said about not thinking outside the box. Does this mean you have trouble problem solving or more that it's difficult to be creative? Do you have a creative side? I relate to a lot in what you said, just have also always been a creative, imaginative person. I have low IQ, but I was never tested for anything else. My parents are actual geniuses, both have poor background, but managed to succeed. All my siblings are smart also. I had trouble following teachers and other kids in class. It took way more time and more examples to figure something out. I never had the time to do anything else than study. I don't think I've had friends since kindergarten. I can't talk to people. I have trouble understanding most jokes in reasonable amount of time. I never understood deeper meaning in any movies, songs, or books, even when somebody explained them to me. The thing that screwed me up the most is the "you can do anything you want if you work hard enough" thing we say to the kids. Because it worked for my parents, they thought it will work for me. And not just them, all motivational speakers, all teachers. I worked 10 times more, literally, than other kids, so I was actually pretty good in high school. I thought that uni is going to be the same. Just by going there and working hard I will get my degree. What happened was that I couldn't follow courses after the introductory stuff. I somehow passed the first year, but I was kicked out after second year because my exam results were so bad. I developed several sleep disorders, several addictions, and I'm in huge debt as a result of my 2 failed years in uni. I can't even get my driver's license. There are too many things on the road to keep track of. Now I'm jobless. I can't even get a job as a janitor and I genuinely don't know what I'm going to do. I had a job at a lumber mill for 2 days until I injured a coworker. I had a job at a restaurant, but I was fired from there also because of my character. My dream was never to earn a lot of money or anything similar. My dreams were things that 99% of people experience, like getting a proper job so I wouldn't depend on my parents, getting a degree to make my parents proud and to prove to people that IQ is meaningless, learning how to drive, getting married and getting kids. Now all those things are impossible and I have 50 long years of my miserable life to live. What do you enjoy doing? What do you feel you actually are good at? Removed. Studies are only starting to show the impact of childhood trauma on learning. It's a big F / deal. No reflection of intelligence at all. Trauma changes us and can be healed. It really can. But man, it's a long and heavy road. And as hard it probably is for everyone else to manage. Your sister's anger is reoring. I'm always so reawed when any of my students or clients show anger. It's so much more hopeful to see than resignation. Feeling angry at being disrespected is a logical response and shows some indication that she understands she deserves better. May her anger drive her towards some healing and eventually peace and self-compassion. I don't know if I'm actually below average, but I have a learning disability. I'm ADHD and I always struggled really hard in school. I would stay up all night studying my ass off, only to make either a D or an F, sometimes a C, if I was lucky. I mean, I really studied. I feel like as an adult it's been a bit easier to learn some things, now that I don't have the pressure of tons of schoolwork and teachers orming and lazy and telling me to try harder. I've taught myself how to keep a budget really well. I've taught myself how to start a wrestling business and even track my expenses really well. I feel like I function alright. But I'm very intimidated by a lot of things that I'm supposed to do as an adult. Anything to do with taxes really scares me because I'm terrified I'll mess them up somehow. I'm really shy in conversations because I have trouble pulling the words out of my brain to explain how I feel about a subject. If I'm writing out what I want to say I can do pretty well, but speaking it is very intimidating. I have a lot of opinions on things and love to learn different viewpoints on things, but I'm terrified of someone trying to debate me or have a conversation with me about any of those things because I don't know how to repeat anything I've learned. I just have it stored in my brain and can't put it into words easily. Basically it's contributed to a lot of my social anxiety and I have a major inferiority complex. I'm 30 years old and I feel like such a late bloomer in every possible way. My mom at my age was already married with 2 children and fully established in her life. I'm nowhere near that point. I'm just now learning the basics of being an adult. I feel like all of my 20s was an extension of my teenage years. I feel buried of myself honestly. It sounds like you have anxiety more than anything else. Lots of intelligent bright people are scared of #ADULTING. I bet if you got some support and care you'd be a totally cool person. You'll be surprised at how the majority feel just like you. I have dyslexia, dyscalculia, and ADHD but an IQ of 120. It's known as the family curse, above average IQs, but lots of learning disabilities that make it hard to show. Everyone in my family was bullied growing up for being stupid, including me. It was hard for me to find friends because of it. My brother was beaten up regularly for it. I couldn't read until 4th grade. Then I had a teacher tell me I'd never do anything with my life. That day I started spending all my free time learning how to read just to give her and the world the middle finger and prove I could do something with my life. After that, while I got good grade, I was still seen as stupid or lazy. I had to work 5 times as hard on everything I did just to keep up. I'm in college now and have accommodations for the first time, which really helps, but also draws more attention to it. I had a friend tell me, college isn't for everyone. I found out later he was making fun of my intelligence with other clamors behind my back. I stopped talking to him. Is it all bad? No. Having to work extra hard for everything in school has seeped into every part of my life. Now that I have accommodations, I feel like I'm unstoppable. At my college, I'm an honor roll student going into geology, president of the STEM club, founder and president of the board games club, part of the student leadership council, and sometimes the college lets me call bingo numbers at events. I love college. What do I want people to know about what it's like to be me? It's a lot like a fish being told to climb a tree. I'm not going to be good at everything you're good at, and that's fine. I don't need to be. I have my own strengths, and that doesn't make me any less worthy of respect, love, or a good life. Edit. Thank you to everyone for sharing your stories. I'm loving reading them, and I'm trying to respond to as many as I can. Also, thank you, kind internet stranger, for my first award. I too have dyslexia. I didn't understand how that impacted my learning until I did a paper on it for psychology. It is so much more than transposing letters or numbers. Growing up, I just thought I was a slow learned. I was made fun of because I wasn't as smart as my older sister. Now I'm in my 50s going back to school. I'm getting A's because I have learned how to study and what works for me. Different colors, study times, subjects, reading out loud works well. Math is going to be the death of me. I don't understand math. Algebra is like trying to read Latin. It just doesn't compute. I see a lot of tutors in my future. Deleted. What's stopping you from going back to a trade school? Removed. Removed. I'm very autistic and had an IQ in the 70s, so it's kind of a mixed bag. I have a great memory for facts, so I did well in grade school, even got an advanced class, but as an adult I'm really struggling. I don't learn very easily, and I don't take instructions well. I can get lost in familiar places. I can't play complex games and get really confused by a lot of things, even normal things like folding towels. I come across like an airhead, and I can be explained in child's terms how to do something, and it takes me at least 3 times every single time. Not every time I do something new. I mean literally every time I do it. It's very frustrating because I'll say I'm not smart and people will be like, no, don't say that. You're smart, but the thing is, I'm not even sad about being dumb. I have other good qualities. I'm funny, I'm pretty, I'm kind. I'm so sick of people acting like intelligence equals worth when that's not at all the case. I'm okay with being slow. Don't pretend I'm not to make me feel better, because what's going to happen is you're going to expect me to be able to do things as if I'm smarter than I am, and then you'll be frustrated when I don't. Pretty much the hardest part is when people, especially on Reddit, pretend intelligence is the only thing that matters when it's maybe among the last things that matter to me personally in a friendship. And also it's frustrating, because if you're a kind person who doesn't fit their drooling idiot image, people write it off as low self-esteem, and then whenever you act dumb you're doing it on purpose to prove a point. Emotional intelligence is a thing. One of my brothers always had a slight mental disability. Maybe you could say below average intelligence. But the things he takes interest in, he often thrives. However, he can struggle to understand things that others would consider almost common sense. He was never diagnosed with anything, or there was never a clear label. I think the worst thing my siblings and I were ever told was that he had some sort of mental disability. Because growing up we were only 2 years apart. For a long time we were best friends. Essentially we were Irish twins. Suddenly, he had something wrong with him. And my siblings treated him slightly different, and so did I. We just stormed that he didn't understand things that we did, etc. Almost similar to how humans treat animals. We are more intelligent, therefore superior. I remember when I was about 13 years old, my brother 15, and we had a mild fight over something silly. In retaliation I said, well, at least I'm not stupid like you. He stormed off and locked himself in the bathroom. Immediately I felt bad and begged him to open the door so I could apologize. I found him crying and he said to me, I know there's something wrong with me, but I just can't understand what it is. At that moment my heart broke. I realized how awful I was to have ever put him in such a box over some minor difference. Since then, I don't treat him any different to anyone else. My siblings still treat him differently to each of us, which is a shame, but it often makes me think, who really is the one with the mental deficiency? Because so what, if you struggle with something, we all struggle with something. At the end of it all, he's still my best friend and we both have each other's backs through everything, and I don't trust anyone quite the same that I trust him. We as humans put so much weight on intelligence. Although I think it's important to understand everyone's struggle, sometimes the worst thing we can do is attach a label or a description which can completely diminish their intrinsic value as a person. So I'm writing this for him to say, just treat everyone with respect and consideration, and suddenly things like low IQ or mental disability become obsolete. This is ducking beautiful. I was not quite qualified for the normal school, but they let go anyway to try it out. I remember the admission IQ test. I knew it was a test and thought there must be some kind of secret bonus answers, like the cube might fit in the triangle hole somehow, since the sides of the cube are smaller than the long side of the triangle. I'm not smart. There's quite a few times I miss what might seem like obvious details. Overall, I've done okay, though a lot of things have been more stressful than they should be, because I'm constantly second guessing myself. You might have a problem just with visual spatial processing. Your verbal skills are obviously fine. I learned to read novels before I started school at 4. I just got things and excelled to the point I was bored. Then I was punched in the head. I'm in my 30s now, still desperately trying to get into university, but knocked back constantly. Can't retain information I hear, and slow to process it sometimes. I'm talking days. I'm a visual can really learner. I'm poor, will never own my own home, because I can't get a job that pays well enough to save. I have no friends and no connections. Can't help my kids with their math homework and also feel like a failure. As a functioning adult, it's difficult because people expect so much more from us than we are able to do or give, which makes us hate ourselves even more. Have you ever read The Ghost in My Brain? It's about a professor that got in a car accident, very mild bump to the head, and his brain got super screwed, but he was able to put words to the crazy mental stuff that goes on afterwards. And he was able to figure out exercises to help. I haven't been able to read the entire book because it's too real for me to handle. So I did have someone go through it and bookmark the different exercise descriptions so I could try similar stuff on my own. That has given me a grand total of 15 hours over the past 2 years, where my brain was functioning in the way it felt before my own incident, which honestly, I don't think I could trade for anything. It also gave me a vocabulary I can share with my family and friends, so they can understand what the bad days are. I don't know if it'll help, but the way you refer to the punch in the head really rhymes with the way I refer to the chair that hit mine, so I can't not suggest it. I have some developmental problems, like ADHD. After years of not doing well in school and wanting to drop out, getting hives from stress, and actually developing heart palpitations from all the stress I was under, I've come to realize that I hate the education system's way of gauging intelligence. I suck at math, hard. Other people excel at it, but other people won't be as good as me at identifying animal species and knowing facts about them. Other people won't be as good at me at drawing, which takes a plethora of knowledge like anatomy and perspective. My autistic cousin can't understand social cues and never went to school because of it, but can build a vacuum cleaner and runs a business at 17. My older sister, who also has ADHD, is currently doing a PhD at only 24, but she has a hard time doing addition and telling time. I really do hate the fact that everyone's existence for the majority of their life is summed up in numbers, determined by people who don't even know them. I know this isn't exactly what Op asked, but our education system and the IQ test is just so biased. I get heated about it lol. I kind of hate the idea that there can even be an average intelligence. Like, what about the impoverished people who never had the chance for a school education? Or the people who live in tribes isolated from society? Maybe they won't know about tube worms, mathematical equations, or linguistics, but they sure as hell will know a lot more about the environment that they live in than I could ever hope to. It seems to me like most of the things you're talking about are knowledge based rather than intelligence based. Removed. My mom got a lot of experimental ECT, electroshock, in the 90s, and it left her with much lower faculties. My single parent, I was around 8, had her brain fried by doctors to the point where she had about a 3rd grader's intellect. I remember her desperate crying and asking me why people kept calling her a retard and a simpleton. I remember her going from a high-paid administrative assistant to not being able to run the register at the local movie theater, hiding under her chair when the boss would come around, then popping up to do work for her. I remember the dude from Dunkin' Donuts who held the door closed to her bedroom while his friend raped her, and how they switched to take turns. I remember lying about my black eye. I remember the cops not showing up until 4 days later and never even writing anything down. I remember all her neighborhood calling her a welfare queen. So she got off welfare, lost her insurance, her house, all her things. I remember finding her 3 weeks later asleep in a pile of trash next to a dumpster. I remember her saying this is where people expect her to be, so she wanted to stay. I remember her getting tased by police officers for asking too many questions and not being able to articulate what she was asking. I remember all the times she tried to kill herself, because that's what everyone wanted. Mostly I just remember her asking why everything is like this. Holy cheese man. This is horrific. I hope things have somehow improved for both of you. Removed. Have a degenerative neurological disease and am freaked out about my mental decline. I tested nuclear reactors for a living and have an incredibly analytic. For example, it took my 5 minutes to remember that word, mind, and I've noticed I become a little slower at processing things, that my non-existent artistic side has started twitching. I still can't bring my artistic ideas to become physical art, but my thought process has shifted drastically. And I do have to smoke a lot of cannabis, so that probably contributes too. My wife and kids understand the changes because they see me daily, but my parents just get frustrated at me, so even though they live 5 minutes down the road, I haven't actually seen them for almost a year now. They tell everyone it's because I'm ungrateful, but I'm not exactly sure why they think that. They would argue in front of me about who will fasten my seatbelt and shit, so I'm better off. They like to ignore what I ask for and just give me what they feel I need with disregard to anything I actually tell them. To be fair, I was never going to be a vice president of a Fortune 500 company like my brother, and I had a kid very early, so I went to college in my late 20s, finishing in 4 years with honors, while working full time. So for whatever reason they love saying she's like, don't you wish you did college like your brother? And him like, dude, I have 3 degrees, and was in charge of nuclear reactors. Oh wow. You're better off not seeing them, because they clearly don't see you for who you really are. I hope very much that you don't listen to them or believe those things they say. Parents can be complicated. We are taught to base all life and opinions of ourselves on what our parents say about us and how they treat us, and it can be damaging and completely inaccurate. Keep your head up, friend. Deleted. That's pretty astounding if true. Like, if the 79 score wasn't just due to test anxiety or some such. In reading comments, learning disability doesn't equal less intelligence. My brother scored pretty high IQ, but has been diagnosed with a learning disability. I mean, a person can be great at school because they were great at memorizing, and taking tests doesn't equal high intelligence either. Learning disability might mean you might need more help with certain aspects of learning because your brain process information different than average person and not low IQ. I was waiting this comment. Similarly, it also doesn't mean less intelligence. It's pretty widely recognized now that IQ tests don't accurately predict intelligence, especially because there are so many factors unaccounted for. Probably too late, but apparently I have an IQ of 98. Diagnosed through neuropsychological testing. I was an honor student in elementary and middle school, didn't have many problems. Then I failed high school and dropped out in 10th grade. I went to beauty school and became a hairdresser. I hated it, so I quit that and spent 2 years teaching myself how to code first. Hated it. Then I switched to teaching myself product design. I was extremely successful with that. Still only have a JED, but have worked for most of the major tech companies and now at a very well-known startup. Hold a few design patents. I made a demo that broke my state's records for the VC funding we got from it. My income is $140,000 per year, and I own a house as a single mom which I've nearly paid off. I'm only 28, and I feel quite successful. While I often feel dumb compared to my peers, I honestly feel more proud that a dummy like me is sitting right next to these geniuses. So yeah, life is what you make it. You don't have to be smart to be successful. The average IQ is 100 by definition. You're average smart, not stupid. Still, big ups. Removed. 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 Not technically below average, but my neurologist/psychologist, not sure which, said I had the biggest disparity between cognitive functioning she had ever seen. I was in the 90th percentile for things like reasoning, and in the 10th percentile for speed. My entire life has been that feeling of after a conversation, you realize what you should have said. I too have had that conversation. My waist test had disparities in it of up to 70 points. Honestly super frustrating all the way through my life, until I found a career where everything I've got to do leverages the stuff I'm good at. The crazy thing is that as I got more and more confident in what I'm good at, I got better at the things I'm less good at as I stopped being afraid of failure. I just took for granted that I'd provide value in my strengths, so I'll just give areas I'm weak at my best shot and not worry about it. Psychological factors matter so much for self-improvement, and school so often completely does a number on your confidence when you're like us. I was born with fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, had borderline personality disorder, and depression and anxiety. I'm a mess some days, but because I'm high functioning, I have good days too. Sometimes it'll be a good day in the morning and a bad day in the afternoon and vice versa. I need things explained to me thoroughly and slowly sometimes, or from a different approach. I have learned over the many, 28 years to be exact, to voice that I need help, or am having trouble understanding. A lot of people say to me, you don't seem like you have a disorder or you look normal. That's only because I have been raised to know of my disorders and to ask for help when needed. I believe knowing when to ask for help is a huge advantage in life. Removed. I passed an IQ test a while ago in a general testing for ADHD. The results were so extremely heterogeneous that my general IQ is irrelevant, but in one test, data processing speed, I fell below average, especially for people with my educational cursus with a score of 83. I can tell that I was not surprised. All my life, it took me a very long time to make complex operations. I tend to get lost, have to start again, verify everything 100 times, etc. Basically, I'm always the one pulling my hairs and getting angry at a simple logical problem just because different informations need to be held to use later, and I'm totally incapable of that. Happily the medication already start to help a lot. Holy cow, I think you're me. I took the waist test, and even though I scored off the charts in some areas, my processing speed is way too low, as is my ability to remember and repeat numbers. Removed. You are not alone, Silver. Removed. 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 So I was placed in learning disability programs from grade 1 to grade 7 because of my level of intelligence. I had to repeat a year of middle school as well. I'm now a resident doctor at the top university program in Canada. Removed. Not to mention I have a borderline retarded IQ and can't tie my shoes, but I just defended my PhD thesis in astrophysics. Press X to doubt. Some really inspiring people on this forum willing to speak out. Thank you. Some interesting things I've learned over the years about IQ and perceived intelligence. My wife tested multiple times and always below 100 for IQ. She can't find her way out of a paper bag. So bad is her directional skills and awareness that she can't often retrace her steps to the starting point. Thank goodness for mobile phones. She has many of these weird and wonderful traits. However, she has a PhD in cardiology / masters in public health, runs her own business and consults with government, and gets invited to international conferences as guest speaker. She is terrible at coming up with common phrases on the spot / jokes and observations. But given prep time to plan out, she can lead World Health Expert conferences with her talks and speeches. She is meticulous and works extremely hard within her skillet. She does also have amazing memory of most things in her past to extremely vivid details. Not didactic, but can't remember something from 5 minutes ago. She'll recheck turning off the stove 5 times. She can imaging programming code in her head, but can't operate a DVD. She is the smartest person in the right circumstances, but the dumbest in others. Me on the other hand always seem to do well at IQ tests. Can remember random facts from years ago that I read and regurgitated at random when topics / situations come up. And so great for trivia quizzes. I have an instinct with directions and generally go by instinct. I'm an it and can't code to save my life. I steal / adapt code if I had to in uni to get by. However, I troubleshoot and manage enterprise networks for a living and damn good at it. I can read people easily and provide and analyze to someone, but incapable of using that to my advantage. I can sit back and see it, but directly with people. Doesn't link up to it. I forget, so pay bills. Keep lists in my head when specifying things like grocery, so need aids like smartphones. Also terrible with visualizations in my head that doesn't exist. Accurate imaging a room with a specific window / door / decor. Nah, sorry honey. Also terrible at remembering numbers. I have many more things I'm bad at, can't remember. Lol. Yes, I'm the guy who says the smart aleck quips and makes the joking observation that kills the room at random. I'm the dumbest person in some circumstances and the smartest in others. Point is, most people should not get too caught up in IQ test spectrum. It's a guide using a specific protocol that may or may not suit your brain. Important thing is find what you are good at and explore it. My wife found hers at a young age and has never stopped and works every day at helping kids with disabilities. Her business has not always been the same immediate goal, but the journey isn't one step. Just because you don't have a skill doesn't mean you don't have others. Try it out, work at it. I know circumstances mean you can't do anything with it for now, but even for yourself, do it for your own satisfaction. Doesn't need anyone to see it or acknowledge it. Work with what you got, cause that's all we got to start with. Me on the other hand is happy-go-lucky and more selfish in nature. We are definitely yin and yang. Yes, I'm very lucky to have her. Removed. I have trouble understanding anything math related. I've only parred one math class and it was with an amazing teacher my junior year. It's like my mind can't understand it at all, and I had countless tutors and the like. My ACT composite was a 25 with a 33 in English and 32 in reading, but my math score was a 14. I'm honestly worried because I start college this fall and I have to take a remedial course and I feel like I'm going to fail that as well. I've cried during geometry tests because I can read it and reread it, but my mind can't put 2 and 2 together. Even with basic things like 50 minus 12, I have to see it and write it down, and usually my answer is still wrong. When I have a good teacher I excel in the class, but sadly I've only ever had one. Do you have dyscalculia? Removed. Hey man, people ducking suck sometimes. Just remember that you can't be expected to be anyone other than who you are, and as long as you're striving towards the best you can be, everyone else can duck themselves. Easier said than done, OFC. Removed. Removed. So I'm autistic and slightly slower than the average person. It mainly affects my problem solving skills, relationships, and ability to learn new things and the way my body works. In everyday life, this can mean things such as, when I'm trying out a new recipe, I'll spend an hour staring at the words, and then 2 more actually making the dish. I have to refer to the recipe all the time, and preparing the ingredients happens in slow motion. If I try to be faster, the risk of failure goes up, and then I'll have to put up with my anger thanks to my problems with emotional regulation. Funny thing I've noticed is that a lot of people like me may not come across as below average in writing, since we can take all the time we want to consider our words and edit our posts. It can easily take me an hour to type a single paragraph, but usually that's rushed and ends up being hard to understand. Needless to say, university wasn't for me. Also, people can sort of tell I'm odd, but I'm high functioning enough that they don't cut me slack for having a disability. It's a pretty taxing place to be, just smart enough to compare myself to them and be able to tell that I'm lacking and knowing there's nothing that can be done about it. Everything I do is out of habit. If I haven't been doing it for years, I won't remember to do it unless I have alarms throughout my day. This really hurts me because I've been trying to learn a language for 2 years, and at my peak I think I was studying a few hours a day for like 6 months. I only remember 3 words for all that effort. I cannot do anything with logic behind it either. I could spend an hour looking at a basic algebra question and really try to get it, to not understand it one bit. I hate it. I hate being so ducking stupid. I hate not being able to learn. I hate how I always forget things a day after people say it to me 99/100th times. I hate remembering life in tiny fragments. Sometimes I don't know if I'm dreaming, or is this reality? This was caused by intense seizures whole life, and stopped breathing at birth. I have no future goals, because I'm good at nothing. Life is hell. Hey, I read your post and I think it is very well written. From my perspective, these seem like memory and retention issues. Intelligence isn't just about remembering things or facts or words. Understanding processes is also a form of intelligence. Plus, honestly, intelligence isn't everything. So I hope maybe you read this and find something in your life that isn't hell. Removed. 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 I'm with you. I suck at math, but did very well in physics, which is all math. But in physics, the math made sense. We were doing it for a real reason. I know how to do math, but if I don't know why I'm doing math, critical dots aren't being connected in my brain and I just can't. This doesn't quite apply to me, but it does in a way. I used to be very smart. School was boring because it was too easy, so they put me in the gifted program, which I also hated. In adulthood my psychiatrist figured I have ADD, which made everything click as to why my attention was so poor despite being so smart. But I also developed persistent depressive disorder around 16 years old, which it turns out is linked to ADD. Got on meds. Depression went away. Then after graduating high school, I went through a process of cycling my meds. Take them, feel normal, stop taking them, fall into depression, rinse and repeat. I was miserable all the time because I work in crap jobs that I was too smart for and felt like I was wasting my potential, but I couldn't live up to that potential because I would keep slipping into a depressive episode and let my life fall apart. So I sort of lost the will to live. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life living the life I was living. I didn't have health insurance, so I couldn't see a psychiatrist, nor afford to see a doctor, so I didn't know there were city/state programs that could cover it. Once I found out and utilized those resources, I got back on meds, depression went away, and went back to college to get a degree. But I was in a persistent depressive episode for nearly 10 years straight. Depression can cause a lot of damage to your cognitive abilities. I've been healthy for a few years now, but my brain is still a mess. I have very few memories. I have a lot of difficulty remembering things. I have trouble retaining information to the point that I have trouble reading. I can read a page and forget what I just read. My ability to focus is the worst it's ever been. My college grades sucked because it was difficult to remember things, so I always performed poorly on tests, and it took me twice as long to do assignments. I can physically feel my brain is not in good shape. I'm trying to do things to improve my brain health, like exercising and eating right and reading more books in hopes that it will rebuild my neural pathways. So far I haven't had any luck, but I'm early in the process, and if it will work, then it'll take time to get there. But to go from knowing you're smart to feeling stupid all the time feels like shiz, and has really impacted my self-esteem. Removed. Jota as window. Removed. Mine might be one of the biggest causes to my depression. I never feel on par with everyone else. I'm slow to learn things, so that makes it nearly impossible to get a non-basic level job. It's caused me to make so many stupid mistakes at work. If I wasn't such a hard worker and good guy, I would have been let go years ago, and that's coming from my manager. I get told to go do a task. I look at it and think I put A into B, then attach it to C, and that show up LD do it, then get yelled at to use my head when I positive that is what I just did. It's a hard life and it's not in my control. I see a lot of people in here conflating low IQ with unintelligence, which simply isn't the case. IQ is only one of a multitude of factors that determine intelligence. Removed. I have a really hard time reading. Due to a condition, I'm actually very intelligent, especially with mathematics. Reading, however, is the bane of my existence. I never even realized how bad I was at reading until college. Social media is sometimes difficult. It's always really embarrassing when people send me timed Snapchats. I often have to tell them I couldn't read it, and they'd send it again, and I'd tell them again. Other times, someone would show me, and some others a post or meme on their phone, and they'd pull it away when I was only on the 4th or 5th word. I'd always have to say wait, I'm a slow reader. Very active group chats aren't fun either. This one is the only one that makes me genuinely sad. I ended up stopping reading recreationally. I actually really like reading, but it's depressingly difficult. The last book I read for fun was less than 300 pages and took me almost 2 years. Not even gonna get into how hard school is. Particularly classes that are reading heavy, textbooks, and reading, research papers. I ended up going into engineering. Numbers are a lot easier. Removed. If you guys are dumb, why are you so eloquent? Reading a lot of books improved my ability to use language. Typing a response is easier too, because I don't need to immediately respond and can take my time processing the question, and I can reread and rewrite/edit my answer as much as I need to before posting it. Conversation in meet space or over the phone is harder because people always want an immediate response and treat me like dirt if I think about what they're saying or what I'm saying. Deleted. I was diagnosed with Asperger's and below average IQ at 13 and struggled academically and socially all throughout high school and had issues with money management in my early 20s. I took a CNA class at 17, and while I did struggle with a state test, I passed on my 3rd attempt. I excelled at the job. My patients love me and I do very well. I got a financial advisor and currently have a 700 credit score. My bills get paid, have my own house and car, and am doing well, but it wasn't easy getting to that point. I struggled. Going through school, I wish people had focused more on my strengths than my weaknesses, and just because my IQ doesn't put me at advanced intelligence doesn't mean I'm not smart. I can tell you pretty much anything you need to know about raising animals, growing plants. I'm incredibly artistic. I feel like the IQ testing held me back from a lot of opportunities. Removed. Truth. I went to high school with a girl who was, on paper, brilliant at everything. She graduated second in a class of over 400, was a semi-pro musician by the age of 15, and wound up attending an Ivy University. Talking to her, however, was like trying to hold a conversation with a recently landed extraterrestrial who didn't understand how the human world works. Girl could barely hold a knife and fork and frequently wore her shirts backwards without realizing it. I'm good person. I'm retarded. My cousin has below average intelligence and I believe a learning disorder. He struggled immensely in school until he was transferred to a different school that took his learning disabilities into account and helped him learn differently. He had a huge turnaround with his grades and graduated from high school. He then learned a trade and is now married with children and pretty successful. I believe that everyone can be successful if their personal stories and issues are being taken into account. That cookie cutter mentality is toxic as hell. I have been tested and found to be slightly above average. However, my sister is slightly below average. She has learning disabilities and has trouble understanding abstract concepts and social cues. In talking with her, she has pretended to understand things all the time because people will get so frustrated with her. It's taught me to be incredibly patient and self-aware. She is older than me by 10 years, but still comes to me to help her with things and teach her how to do stuff, like change a tire, or how to respond to someone in certain situations. I go through it slowly, and if she doesn't understand, I take it on myself to try and put it a different way or use real tangible examples. In my opinion, the fact that she wants to learn when it is so much harder for her is super ducking impressive. We should respect people who admit they don't understand. It's incredibly brave. My sister has taught me so many things on accident that I can't even convey to her because they are too abstract. She also makes wicked good strawberry cake. I actually don't know my IQ. However, I found out that my nonverbal IQ was 79 when I was going through 2 years of terrible brain fog. I don't know if my score would have been different if I had been tested today. I'm always the last to figure out how to solve problems. I also need extended time on tests at school because of my poor memory and processing speed. However, this may be more likely related to my autism and OCD. Despite my limitations, I have been pretty darn successful in school and most of my jobs. I graduated high school with a 3.7 GPA and got a 25 on the ACT without studying. I'm currently studying to become a forensic biologist. I know I'm going to get my degree because I just passed my second semester of organic chemistry and calculus. I wish people would understand that math tutors and disability accommodations can make a big difference in our lives. I don't think I would have been able to succeed without them. I don't have below average intelligence, but I do have Asperger's and ADHD. Because of this, I've practically been bullied all my life, and also some people will hear that I technically have autism and they will belittle me and think I'm the most retarded person in the world. It's been hard for me to socialize and make friends. I have a small group of actual friends. I have a mindset every day because of it that I'm the most ugliest person in the world. I just wish I could be accepted and not thought of as a retard. Open bracket. Don't let low IQ prevent you from achieving greatness. You might even be president someday. This will be buried, but here it is anyway. I have a learning disorder called dyscalculia. Think dyslexia with numbers and processing defects, complied with working memory disorder. Overall, this results in an IQ of around 84. How does this affect me? Well, I get 50% extra time in university level classes regarding math and STEM courses with some other accommodations, but I'm happy to say that I currently have a B+ in Calc and will eventually complete my degree in ecological science with a 3.0 average. It's tough. I try a lot harder than other students in my university and rarely get above a C+ in math class. After spending 15+ hours a week on a single class, it can get discouraging. It's absolutely difficult and many tears have been shed, but I'm happy to say that it's not impossible. I'm also double majoring in English with a creative writing emphasis, and am typically top of my class in English class. IQ is not destiny. It takes longer for me to pick things up, and math will never be my strength, but I can do it. TLDR, I had a rough beginning in school, but life got better after school. I was given an IQ test when I was in 3rd grade. I remember taking the test, and I remember there was a parent conference afterwards. But I never knew the score, and never heard the results of the parent conference until I was an adult. Only late in life did I know the discussion was regarding keeping me down a grade. My parents didn't keep me back, so I progressed with my clamors. I always did great in math, but did awful in English or history. I can easily learn ideas and relationships between things, but memorizing facts was never gonna happen. I had to cheat my way through catechism because I could not remember Bible verses at all. I remember a 10th grade history class where something went click. I suddenly could read with comprehension. My memories before this event are mostly foggy, so it's like I transitioned from a puppy to a fully formed adult form of me in that clap. That's the point where my life truly began. My grades got much better, and I made it into engineering college. And I followed that with a good career in computer design. I still have major issues in my visual cortex. Riding a bike through trees with shadows that go light/dark/light/dark quickly seems to hit a reboot button on my brain. I need a minute or so of quiet time before I can ride again. And my music affinity is off the chart. If there is any background music, however quiet, it becomes foreground in my brain, drowning out my ability to follow conversations. I'll never be 100%, but then again, who is? I'm functional enough to have good friends and family, and that's all that really matters. After an accident, my husband was diagnosed with memory and cognitive problems. The biggest result is that he can't follow directions. I don't mean driving directions, but basic life directions. For example, if he needs to pay the electric bill, that means he has to determine the amount of the bill, find the port, log in, find the right debit card, or find the paper bill, find the checkbook, write a check, find a stamp. Paying the electric bill is actually pretty complex if you write it down. It's a long list of directions, not one simple thing. That's what he'd want you to know. I have dyslexia, so my spelling and reading is at a 3rd grader's level, but since spell check and being able to text through talking, it's almost unnoticed. It hasn't really held me back from much. I find myself making simple mistakes here and there from it, but I just laugh it off. The only time it really affects me is when I post something on Reddit and my grammar or spelling is wrong, and I get torn up. I've always understood that I was never the smartest person in the room. When my GF and best friend would have board game nights, I would get completely annihilated. I knew my only redeeming factor was that I was a really hard worker and super persistent, so that's why I knew I was allowed in the room with these types of people. Sometimes persistence and hard work is just as powerful as intelligence. I'm authorized to take these tests with kids and have had to diagnose them with mental retardation. Therefore, I found this an interesting question. Some of these answers were really useful and helpful. The kids I work with are having a hard time. It's reassuring to know lots of you have figured out a way to live/deal with the difficulties it brings along. My intelligence, I think, is now fairly normal, or probably a bit above average considering the way I have scored on standardized tests, generally the top 99.7 to 99.9%, but I also think that I may just be a good test taker, as I definitely feel like I can tell there are deficiencies in the way my brain functions in relation to many other people who seem to be able to do things like spelling, math, spatial awareness and reasoning, etc. way more easily than I can. Anyway, I had a really bad head injury when I was 14, and it temporarily made me basically mentally handicapped. It completely destroyed my ability to create memories, read body language, understand so many things. I even lost my ability to read briefly. I couldn't follow the simplest instructions, no matter how hard I tried, even though I really thought I was doing it well. The only way I know that I wasn't were the many accounts of my behavior during that time, related to me by friends, family, and teachers. I also was able to look back on tests and assignments, and it was just so bizarre and nonsensical the way I would fail to follow the most basic instructions. I remember just staring confused at writing for a long time and not being able to tell if I lost my ability to read or if the writing was in a different language or some kind of weird technical jargon like computer code that I couldn't decipher. It was scary and so frustrating. Removed. I have well below average processing speed, like below the 10th percentile. Basically what this means for me is that it takes me much longer than clammers or cowhawkers to complete schoolwork or work-related tasks. I can also be quite slow to follow a conversation, and I've always had trouble fitting in and understanding jokes quickly. I had testing done in elementary school and did very well on everything other than the poor processing speed. I have had in-class accommodation since then. The weirdest thing for me has definitely been how other people perceive this. Many students would get accusatory when I had a ton of extra time on tests and scored higher than them. and it can be a bit of a mess when dealing with university professors. Some of them are not very flexible or understanding. I've had them try to talk me out of using accommodations in their courses before, which is no fun. Something that a lot of people don't consider with this type of learning disability is that taking longer to do things carries over into my homework. I may have extra time on tests, but when it comes to assignments I'm on my own. I could work on a lab report for twice as long as my roommate, and we'd accomplish the same amount of work. Sometimes I just run out of time to finish things, no matter how hard I work, which is very hard. It certainly gets frustrating, but I know there's not much I can do other than continuing to work hard. I've always had trouble at school. Learning and keeping up with my peers was an absolute challenge. The fact that my older brother was an overachieving local child celebrity that excelled at everything he laid his hands on never helped either. Every year of school, my grades plummeted even lower, and my teachers, peers and neighboring folk all simply believes that I was the other child among the two. I've always had a flair for art, and that's the only mode by which anyone ever got a glimpse of my mind. I would barely stitch together a sentence or make eye contact. Most of these traits were just ignored, and I went on to believe that this was me. As I got older and completed my high schooling, however, I began to read quite a bit. Mostly self-help books, classics, and a ton of humor. Must have been the reading habits that helped me find the words associated with the things I was feeling, or simply puberty and the resultant vigor that kicked up my ego just enough so I could work on myself. Somewhere through all this, I learned enough about mental health and self-improvement and became a certified interpersonal communications trainer. I make art about mental health, and that's how I make a living. One day, in conversation with my mother about the direction I'm taking my life in, she tells me that she never wanted me to know when I was younger, nor did we have the money for therapy and treatment, because by the time I was 6, I displayed signs of being autistic. She even had a certificate of my disability that she would presented at school if in case they decided to not let me continue. I was allowed to continue simply because I got the bare minimum every time. Looking back now, I realize why my mom was always reading about child psychology. Why she was so strict about the way I walked, the way I sat down, and even the way I positioned my head. All the little training that went into myself, I'm imparting to already gifted people, and I'm surprised at the results. I suppose we all need to always work on being a better version of ourselves. Up here, hey everyone. I stepped away from my computer for a few hours and this post really took off. I want to thank everyone who took the time to share their personal stories and experiences. I've learned a lot from reading these posts, and I'm sure that many people here came away with a new perspective. I didn't expect this question to take off the way it did, but I'm so glad to see all the positive discussion that has come out of it. Just to share a couple of things that I've learned from this discussion. 1. The human mind is a complex thing, and I now believe that defining intelligence as a single trait is almost impossible. In this thread I've read so many responses that are articulate, insightful, thoughtful, and wise, from people who have been told and who believe that they are in some way intellectually deficient. Reading through these responses makes me think that the human intellectual existence is sort of like being a cook. Some people have the privilege of working in a fancy kitchen with all the gadgets and a 12-burner stove, while other people have a kitchenette in a studio apartment. But what really matters is what you're able to make with what you've got. I'm convinced that each of us has bits of brilliance in us, regardless of the kitchen we are working with. 2. Contrary to the predictions of the naysayers, lots of people shared deeply personal experiences here. I appreciate your willingness to share. I hope you all got as much from this discussion as I have. Thank you all again. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.